everybody. Thank you so much for coming. We're going to have a Google career talk and also do a Google translation volunteer session. I'm really excited. Now, by a show of hands, how many people are TLM? So TLMers. How about T? T and I? CI? Couple? Okay.
Many honorary TLM students, though. I saw a lot of hands there.
Nice. Well, I'm really pleased to introduce to you today Mengmeng Niu. She is the Google Translate Community Program Manager, where she grows the Google Translate community of over 3 million active members. Prior to this role, she served as the Program Manager of Localization at Google and as the Multilingual Content Program Manager at Adobe. Mengmeng is a native speaker of Chinese and earned an MA in Translation and Localization Management from MIIS in 2008. Prior to MIIS, she earned an MA in Applied Linguistics from Beijing Foreign Studies University and a BS in Computer Science and Technology from Beijing Language and Culture University. She is passionate and skilled in localization, machine translation, terminology, and product management, to name a few. In her spare time, she enjoys creative pursuits such as drawing, painting, and cooking. Please welcome Mengmeng Niu to MIIS.
Thank you, that was a very nice introduction, by the way. Better than if I had put it together.
Thank you for coming. So there's a couple different aspects to this session today. First, I'm going to be asking Mengmeng some career questions, and then we'll open up some questions to the audience. Then she'll be introducing Google Translate. And then lastly, you'll be doing some volunteer translation work for Google Translate.
I would call it a volunteer translation work. It's more like community, fun contest. Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to be doing a little contest, and the winner will get some swag, and we have some other prizes.
Yeah.
It's exciting.
Yeah.
Okay. So first, Mengmeng, do you mind telling us about your career path and where you were from college until now?
Okay, so I was in computer science in undergrad, and I've always thinking, looking at other people from, like English majors who already, go and taught students in grade school and earn some extra money. I was like, hey, I want to be over in that major. But it was very hard in China back then to switch majors. So I just finished up my computer science, and I was like, hey, I want to do something English related. So I studied hard and got into this school, called graduate school, in very specialized in language and education, and even simultaneous interpretation. So I studied applied linguistics, and it was not like what I had imagined, basically. So, I didn't get to carry literature books and listen to big professors talking about literature. No, I was basically spending my time in the library here and there, trying to find research studies. So, after a year and a half, I graduated from the MA school in applied linguistics, and I was like, what to do next? And I really wanted to do to be a language teacher back then, but because it was too much competition and my major wasn't English when I was in undergrad degree, so I had to kind of think about what to do next. And my dad was like, do you want to go travel and go study somewhere abroad, to see the world outside of China? I was like, okay, yeah. So I applied for this university, and there's a I imagined myself to be in the booth in the UN meeting and doing simultaneous interpretation. And when I got here, I was like, it was hard, I have no idea what I was getting into. But luckily, I attended a job fair, career fair after the first year, and I got this opportunity to go to Adobe to be a terminology management intern. So I worked there for about 3 months, and I got a full-time job, and that's how I started the career. And then I stayed in Adobe for 6 years, where I did a lot of machine translation, multilingual content, product management type of work. And then, I moved to, basically I went to Google 2 years ago. So ever since then, I've been working there. Yeah, that's pretty much the long path where I was trying to figure out myself, like what am I passionate about, where I am, and finally, I'm on a job I'm really passionate about and feel happy.
Nice.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So it sounds like there's some twists and turns along the way.
Yeah.
So along that journey, what was the best career advice that you'd ever heard?
Well, a lot of people told me that, just be passionate about, know what you are passionate about and do what you're passionate about. A lot of times it's not easy for me. I was like, what am I passionate about, right? So I'm just like keep trying new things. And that's really taking a lot of time for you to go and try things, because for me it was like 6 years in Adobe to discover what I really liked. So if I did something like the future me would told me like 10 years ago what I would do, I would probably like go talk to people, work in different industry, different sections. You can go talk to like product managers to see what the job is like. For example, look in LinkedIn and find some product managers at Google or some other tech companies and understand, hey, what is your job is about, right? It's like more business oriented. Or you want to know like, hey, what is program management job related?
Mm-hmm.
You can go talk to people or alumni who's in program management and understand like, what it is about. Or you can read books about, like, hey, I'm still like, I myself is still reading a lot of books about like, different roles and what a job boundary is like, and in different, basic different roles in company. Yeah, I would totally encourage you to use your time rather than just focusing on whatever you are assigned to do. Go out and talk to people, understand what does the job look like, see whether that's something resonate with you. If it does, that's a good sign, and keep talking. I think that would be the best thing. Like so that's the most easiest way, and rather than spending a lot of time yourself trying to figure this out.
That's a great point.
From others.
Also, it's also known as informational interviewing, and we have a network of alumni, and you can contact us, and we can help set you up with informational interviews. So
Yeah,
keep that in mind.
Liz really good at that. Like you have basically a list of people. You use that resource. I think it's good. I did it, so I highly recommend you do that. So yeah.
Great. So, would you mind telling us what a typical day looks like for you now?
Okay, let me see yesterday. Let me pull up my calendar. My day kind of varies a whole lot, but just to give you a concrete example, so yesterday, it was Monday, and I woke up before kids, I have 2 kids by the way, before they got up and I went to work, because I have several meetings in the morning at 9, so I want to have some time for myself to check my emails, see what my day is going to be like. So I arrived around like 8 o'clock and then did a few talks with the community members. And then I attended this meeting, basically some meeting that I asked to invite myself to. It's another group at Google. I just want to know like what they're doing, kind of community related, but it's not transit community. So just tagged along and hear what's happening. And afterward, that was fun. I I contacted someone, like Transit Hero, who contributed the most in Pakistan for the language of Sindhi. So I got hold of him. His name is Javad, and we were like talking and understanding and getting to know him. So that was the highlight of my day. Hey, why did you contribute? This guy just doing contribution, validation for the pure heart of improving Sindhi in Google Translate. So that was kind of inspiring. And that guy, by the way, bought like 6-inch tablet and 3G data plan just to make sure it looks all good and to do this. I was just like amazed.
Wow.
There's no prize or nothing. Anyways, and after that, I had lunch with someone who was also in Google, who's been in Google for a long time. I got to meet him, and he used to be very good in community management and several products. So I just, hey, would you mind have lunch with me and have a brainstorm session? Here's a problem we're facing. Any advice you have? So I had a long lunch with him, and it turned out to be really inspiring. And afterwards, I had meeting with our privacy people to launch some features in transit community and all these legal paths that I have to do. And afterwards, I left home early, and then I pretty much like home early and pick up my kid from preschool, and then okay, so I got them to, have lunch with me in the table by, hey, let's tell stories, what happened during their day. That was my trick to get my kid to eat like dinner together with me at the table, and then afterwards, yeah, that's pretty much the day.
Sounds like a pretty packed day.
Yeah, it's like I really try to give time to spend with my family and stuff. Yeah,
Great. Okay,
I don't know if it's like too. Okay, if you don't find it very interesting, I apologize. It's just my typical day. Oh, by the way, I just fell asleep at 9 last night. I meant to do some work to catch up, but then I was like slept, and then this morning I woke up and I get to do something that I was not going to be bottleneck about at work, and I feel good at coming back, like coming here before I get everything organized. So, yeah.
Excellent. Well, I know you all must be dying to ask some questions, and so I'm going to open up the floor for the audience. Does anyone have a question? Don't be scared.
How does it feel to work?
It's actually a very different culture than like my previous company, and I really enjoyed it. It's very dynamic. It's very collaborative. So it's, for example, like right now I'm like managing a lot of projects, a lot of things. I feel like myself, I cannot really stretch that thin. I'm already like working very hard, so I can just go and talk to people. Hey, do you mind? Are you interested in working with me on this project? And Google other teams, and they all have like 20% time they can allocate to anything they're passionate about. So yeah, I feel like it's much easier to get people to work together and to get things done. It's very unstructured in a way, but in a good way.
It sounds very collaborative.
Very collaborative, and you can give like peer bonus. There's like incentives too. If you work outside of your domain and help out and make some impact, the people that you work with, you're doing a good job, they can give you a peer bonus. And, yeah, so there's stuff in place, and yeah, people are generally find it very easy to do work this way. Yeah, it's very cool.
Do you have a 20% project?
I did.
You did.
But right now I don't even have time. Yeah, I do. It was more like data analytics. So in my previous team, helping out. Yeah, and I got peer bonus for that. So just yeah, it's fun. It's fun. It's like little things you can put on your resume and show like you don't just focus on your own little square and box. You actually care about the company and even like you go and volunteer on stuff on the community. And,
Do you
like
mean your
goes-
internal resume that is used for your annual review, or do you mean
Everything. Like
your
you
regular
put it up
resume?
You can put it up on LinkedIn. If
Oh.
I found that, I don't know, I can't really speak on behalf of Google HR, but I find that if you have a lot of, activities on, here's the community I've helped on, or here's, I even like the park, I helped clean up, I think it's very good. And myself, I'm still working on it. I'm not super good. I had kids too early and spend a lot of time like taking care of them, so yeah, but I'm trying. Good question. Yeah, sure.
How involved are you with the actual machine translation engine at Google?
So I'm not very much involved in terms of, coding. Not much. It's more like, they have presentations every, the scientists all have presentations like every week, and I'll go and learn like, oh, what is going on? What is the research study? The Google Translate is pretty much like research oriented in Google. It's not money making. It's just purely for research. So yeah, I give it, but it's really hard to understand, too. So I'm trying to, keep up with myself on what's going on in the industry. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Back in Adobe, though, I was very much involved, pretty much as a role of, program manager, launching the machine translation feature in the Adobe product. So we don't have a homegrown type of machine translation engine. We use a third party. Like back in Adobe, we use a third party. So it was more like integration work, more like user front end face. Like, hey, I want to translate this blog post. What is the experience going to be like if I don't speak the language? So a lot of work going around that. But in the engine itself, I'm not an expert, and it's really hard for me. So, yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
How do your responsibilities differ from other localization program managers at Google for other products?
So I'm not really in the localization industry now, but for the past year I was. I don't know. So basically, localization project management is more like, what would I say? More like you have to be able to communicate very well with your different functional team, understand where your product team works, kind of like what they want. So it's very different in terms, depending on where localization sits in an organization. So for some organization like Adobe, before I left, it was, even now Google is like centralized, like a service centralized organization where you manage many products, and then you have product teams, vertical. So you have this group of project managers working for different products. I think after I left Adobe, there was a reorg, and now I think Apple's model is more like, I have my own localization team within the product. There's pros and cons, but basically that's kind of like org structure. Yeah, I think for me, having worked as a localization project manager in Google, which is pretty much centralized model, I kind of think you don't have much say on the product. If you really want to influence on the product, you probably want to go to an organization where localization department sits within each verticals. So yeah, that depends. I wouldn't say like that we have zero say. We have some initiatives, right? But it's less flexible, right? So yeah.
Do you have a presentation, or is it just Q&A?
We have time, right?
Or
This is the part of the career talk,
Okay.
which is going to last until about 12:45.
Gotcha.
You gotta think questions, guys. 15 minutes. Okay.
All right, career-wise, what do you think that made a difference in terms of your background to land jobs at Adobe and Google? Maybe the applied linguistics. You said you studied applied linguistics, right?
I think
And
for
computational linguistics too, or
computer science,
computer science and applied linguistics. You think that combination helped you to get these jobs?
I think definitely it helped for me, probably to get me in the door. Yes, I think it does help, especially in Silicon Valley. Computer science background is pretty much, it's like nice plus. But I wouldn't discourage people who don't have computer science background. To be honest, it's just something that helped me to get in the door. But the thing is, once I was in the door, I didn't get to use a lot of, I didn't code that much. I probably did very minimum. But I think what's really important is that you have to have desire to learn, and really to learn doesn't mean that you just get in your booth and read. And I think what's really helpful is just talking to people, and yeah.
So what do you think is more helpful? Because many times I get people asking me how technical the job is, how much do I need to know about writing code? What do you think is more helpful? To understand languages and translation, or to understand how the machine works?
So let me learn a little bit more about what type of job did they ask you to like?
Localization, project management, localization engineer, and I guess you're involved with something else than that.
So yeah, I can see that localization engineer, yeah, you do need to write Python. You know what, if you have time, I really encourage you to learn Python. I myself, I don't know, but I can see this is a trend. If you have some sort of Python experience, that's going to be really helpful. Python is a scripting language. Basically helps you to automate your manual job, probably. Like I did a lot to automate my own work to be efficient. But that's one thing. Another thing, I think, what is the technical skill, which is very important, is the kind of like the SQL, querying database. It comes in handy for me. To be honest, 2 months in this job, my current job, although I'm a community program manager, whatever, and I spent like 2 months learning this big data table and how to do all the queries. And nobody asked me to do it. I just figured, without knowing, by the way, the data that's stored in that big data table is all like our user, our contributors, their demographic information, not demographic information, more like contribution patterns, right? So in order for me to drive contribution growth and even know what I'm dealing with, right, I really spend a lot of time, like on my own, just slicing and dicing the data, and without even going out for a survey, I kind of know, like, oh, where the problem lies. So I think that's a very important skill, even more than Python. Python is more like, yeah, automation and help get yourself into the door. But I think, anything like, if you want to go to Google, learn Dremel. So Dremel is kind of like the not relational. Anyway, learn the big data and how to do SQL, very basic things. For example, there's select and from and where, statement. Just know a little bit for you to be able to even talk within your, during your interview. I think that's going to be very helpful. And to be honest, any product managers, program managers, a very, very key skill to have is data analytics skill. And you want to prove, if you are going into any of these tracks, you want to prove that you have the tools in mind of what it takes to, to be able to perform your job. Is it helpful?
We have a new elective in TLM, Introduction to Computer Programming with Python.
Awesome, that's very good. I'm
We do
glad.
not currently cover SQL in any of our curriculum, but that can be changed very easily if you think that applies to more.
I think it's more like depending on your career path. For example, to be a project management on like some other thing, you probably don't need that. It's probably an overkill. But for people who are really, into like business analytics, data is a big thing, right? You need to have the data, you need to have the insight, you need to have the buy-in anywhere. So I think it's a good skill to have. You don't have to have it, then that means you have to have a good personal skill to work with engineers who want to work with you and give you this extra help that you need. The engineers in my company is pretty much like tasked with their own key results. They're very busy, and I wouldn't want to bother them like with this data pulling stuff. And it's very frequent. I would like pull different data points, like write a bunch of scripts and tweak and stuff. So I wouldn't want to bother them much.
What is the Google interview process like?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so Google interview process. How can I even start? I'm a lucky one. It took me like a month to get in, from beginning like when someone called me from Google. Oh no, I did apply. So and then from application to get in, it's a little bit longer than a month. But basically, there are like 3 or 4 cycles. So first, you apply or someone refer you, and then Google will, the HR recruiter will reach out to you and have a basic like talk with you it's called pre-screening. And if he thinks you're a good fit, then he will forward it to the, hiring manager who will have another phone interview with you. And if that's a good fit, you go to meet with other, the team members. Oh, it doesn't have to be team members. It's more like whoever in the track that you were going into, like for the program management track, people from other teams interviewing me, It doesn't even have to be the same. So it's kind of like that. So I think it's good to know more than beyond just localization. You want to know the career path of these titles, roles, and you also want to know a subject. Also want to become like a subject matter expertise, which is localization, right? So that's how you win. Is it helpful?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. We have time for maybe one question. All right.
There was a question.
Oh, was there another one?
Yeah, I was about to ask the same question.
Oh.
I just want to know quickly. I'm very nervous because of this stuff.
Yeah.
What's your favorite part of your job?
User facing. It's just like yesterday, the meeting with this guy in Pakistan just made my day. I think I gradually figured, user facing, like talking to users is my passion. Unfortunately, it took me years to realize that because when I was my previous jobs, I was always working in this centralized small team, so my customers are all internal product teams. It was okay. I didn't like it that much, so I think that's been my biggest.
you mentioned something that it is not about business, it's about research. I think I read a blog post by Google Translate like last week or 2 weeks ago about the new languages that were added to the program.
Yeah, you got it.
They were very exotic. I don't know if that makes sense to call
They
a
are
language
very-
exotic, but
yeah,
definitely it's not fixed or something like, with a lot of speakers.
Exactly.
Are you involved in any way making the decision of what languages are added to the program?
So I wasn't involved in the decision making. It was made like, a year ago. Basically, there are several criteria. One, you have to have enough written data. And the reason why we wanted to add to Google Translate is because before those languages were added, there were 90 languages. We want to reach to this milestone of 100. That covers 90% of the online population. So that's kind of like the internal goal driven that. On the other hand, there is enough written bilingual data, aligned bilingual data that's there. And also the biggest factor is the community. The Frisian, Frisian is a language spoken in Netherlands. And the community is just zealous about like adding Frisian, they just finished a celebration event. It was huge. And then people in Afghanistan, Pakistan, after launching that, yeah, they were really like, I see people posting on our forum saying like, I would do anything to add my language. Anything. I like that. Like the guy I talked to yesterday, he spent his own money, paid the 3G data plan, and Pakistan was like, wow. So language, especially people who are speaking like these languages, they have this passion to preserve their languages. I think that's why kind of like driving us, even now we're kind of like, okay, we reached 100, but we still have people like asking about this other, several like very indigenous languages where like it takes a whole team of engineers a whole year, to do this. So we don't want to discourage people, but basically it's like, yeah, a lot of effort.
It's a challenge.
I'm probably working with Unicode to get character sets
Yeah, we
into
do.
Unicode.
Yeah, we do have an internationalization team very closely. I don't know if you know, Craig Cornelius is very advocates on Unicode. He has relationship with UN. So yeah, he's very active. If you would like to know, I can see if he's willing to be contacted. It's very cool.
So you do look at a lot of data and web traffic and user and content online, so that's when data analysis and management comes into place to make those decisions, right?
Yeah, so that's more like, I would say that's a day-to-day must have if you are a product manager or community program manager, kind of like user-facing, right? You want to know the user behavior, you want to know where the gaps are, where we should focus the product on, where did you lose most of the people, right? So, yeah, things like that. But for localization, in my previous job, I actually did some data analytics in a very small scale. It's more like, how much we spend, what is the volume, and what is the cost driving factor, because localization is very much about, cutting costs and improving quality, where we can basically, here is how you earn credibility. You have the insights that nobody else have, right? How do you gain insights other than talking to people? Data. The data is out there. It just takes some learning to get to it. So that's my biggest two takeaways. Like, you have to earn your credibility. How do you do that? You have to know something that other people don't see. Yeah. There you go.
Great. Well, it seems like we hit the 12:35 mark, and so we must move on to the presentation. Thank you so much for your wonderful questions.
Yeah, very
We'll
good
talk more
question.
soon.
Awesome. Okay. So just another introduction of myself. I'm a program manager on Google Translate community. We are the same team with Google Translate team. So the talk is about telling you about the Google Translate as a product. You probably already know, by the way. How many people are using Google Translate every day?
Not for your translations though, right?
I have to say, I use that the most frequent time when I use Google Translate is when I was at home.
Yeah.
So for every translation homework, without even know what that is, I paste it in Google Translate, and then I'm like, okay, I can post edit on top of it. So good. So I'm preaching to the choir right now, and I also would like to spend the second half talk about translate community, and really, machines cannot just work. So this is the critical part, and really encourage you to, join our community. It's not really about work. I'm not gonna force you to work if you're not even passionate, and that's not the type of community members that we like to have, just to make sure, I'm not here like trying to ask you to do work. Anyways, so let's start with the, I'm sorry, is the sound on?
Volume knob in the upper right. I think on this, in this room, where's the volume knob in here?
Words about food, more than 100 billion words are translated every day.
Thank you very much for your help.
Words about food, words about friendship, about sport, about belief, about fear. Words that can hurt and sometimes divide. But every day, the most translated words in the world are how are you, thank you, and I love you.
Go to the next slide. You probably all know about Google's mission. Before I go into the next slide, I'd like to ask you a question. You'll get swag if you answer it close enough. So, how many percentage of the population, how many percentage of the web content is in English? 3?
70%.
Any guess?
Oh, sorry.
90? Anybody else? You guys have any?
70%.
80%?
70%.
70%? Any last chance?
90.
25. All right. So next question. What is the percentage of the world population that speaks English? 40? Any more guess? 30?
Go down to like
30? Anybody else?
25.
25? 10? 10? Anybody else?
15. 15.
15? All right, last chance.
His hand was on his mouse though.
Okay, let's see. Who said 70? All right. Sorry. Who said the 10, right? Very close. Yeah, so basically the top 10 languages on the web are listed in here. That means the majority of the people who do not speak English well enough to even understand the web, right? So that is the business that Google Translate is into, basically, to help the world access the information. It's very much tied back to our mission. There's some translators I heard, worried and concerned about, Google Translate is stealing our job. Actually, I understand that, and I myself as a translator, it's really different. Google is not into the business of professional translation. It's more about having the information accessible, to the world, to serve the population here that do not speak the language. All right, so Google Translate, here's some stats. I thought you might be interested to know. I didn't pull these, by the way. So 1 billion translations every single day. That means, pretty much the text about 1 million books. And for Google Translate, we have 500,000 monthly active users. This means 1 out of 6 people in the world use Google Translate. Think about the impact that you can probably do, like 1 out of 6. 95% users coming from outside of the United States. Brazil is our top market. Like you just said, last week we launched 13 new languages, and these are the languages that we added to Google Translate. Now, all the languages in Google Translate cover basically and serve 99% of the online population. So, anybody know any of these languages? Frisian, Kyrgyz, Hawaiian, Kurdish, Luxembourgish, Samoan, Scots Gaelic, Shona, Sindhi, Pashto, and Xhosa. We, the team at Google Translate doesn't really speak any of these. I don't know how they made it happen, by the way. We have communities who helped a whole lot. I can get into that later. Anyway, that's what it looks like in each language. All right, so Translate, you probably can relate to this. Translate changes people's lives. This is actually from a newsletter that I sent out in the most recent February edition. So this is about this little girl who had, the Swedish newcomer student in her school just happened to sit by her, and the Swedish kid didn't speak any English, so she managed to navigate her first day, help her navigate her first day by just talking in, Google Translate, and her dad sent me this photo. It's pretty cool. And then there's love stories for, I think this is after Haiti earthquake, a French UN peacekeeper met his future wife, who is some sort of volunteer, doesn't speak French, I think from the United States, so they fell in love, and this is a love story. And then also it saves people's lives. In Oregon State, police use Translate app to aid a diabetic driver. It's a Chinese driver who doesn't really speak English, so that's how they communicate. Yeah, you can relate to this, right? Anyway, this is just a quote from someone who thanked us in a forum. All right. Here. My husband highly recommended me adding this in the middle of the presentation, by the way. So, okay, I remember why. So this is about really how this can change, the feature of Google Translate can change people's lives. Let's take a look.
Okay, here we go. Testing.
This is our word lens
One,
feature that was launched last year.
One,
Basically, you
two.
hold the Google Translate app in some
And flip
languages,
it.
it's instant translate.
Next.
Down, up, down.
I got it.
Please tell me you were involved. No.
So, but this is indeed a video. That guy, our product manager, he interviewed me. He tried to sell this to me. He used this video, and I was sold. So, yeah. So, little things. They're trying. We're trying to make sure that Google Translate can help people in many ways to smash the language barrier. All right. So now back to serious. So how it works. I'm not a big pro on machine translation or machine learning. I know a bit, but I can explain to you in layman term how it works. basically it needs a lot of data. It needs a lot of parallel data, bilingual. And what it does for statistical machine translation, it looks for patterns. So for example, on the left, 鸡汤, it means chicken soup. Okay, it learns, oh, this, and then keep going to the list. 鸡汤, oh, chicken soup. So it knows that every time there's a soup, every time this thing happens here, and there's something like Z always in front of that, and it learns in translation, same pattern, so next time they'll know. Okay, for 鸡汤, I know how to translate. Same thing with egg drop soup. It always happens right before the soup, so it knows, oh, next time I see those words, I'll give it egg drop soup. So, go ahead.
Like all the fields and professions, they have their own lingo, medical lingo, engineering lingo. Should the internet also create a lingo where all the world could communicate with each other?
That's
If
weird.
Google is into it, I'm in it, I have already started it.
Awesome. We should talk. All right, so.
I have to go for a meeting.
Okay. All right. So that's just in a layman term, but in reality, we use content from UN, trusted source for bilingual data. United Nations has 60 languages, so that doesn't cover all the languages we use. And then we use Europe Parliament, and they have 24 languages. That doesn't cover all of our languages. The majority of the data comes from the web. The web also means like any data. It may not have the best quality, but that's what we use to train our machine. It's improved a lot, and sometimes it doesn't still. It still has mistakes. So before community, this is actually corrected by community. Before, this is in Russian. So bed bugs is translated as bed plus the bug debugging error. Yeah, so users, this, it's actually pretty funny. Like, I don't speak Russian, but I guess someone feel like so unhappy and uncomfortable, just, the OCD, right? Just, I want to correct it. And then they reach out to us, we receive a lot of feedback like that. How can I correct it? So we finally implemented this, suggest and edit. You can suggest it, and then, the version 2 is the translate community. That's how it kind of, came into being. So, and then if you suggest and edit, it will be corrected. So, let's see. All right, so community. Many people probably don't know that, for Google Translate to be able to interpret, speak very, very conversational day-to-day language very well. If you have noticed lately, it's pretty good in a lot of these, like what's your name, how are you, like all of these. It's because we have a crowd system behind it. So we have 3 million active contributors who just contribute, to Google Translate community that make Google Translate speak better and better in their language. And they've made over the, we launched it in summer 2014. So there are like 75 million contributions. And then there are 117 languages. And these people helped launch several languages in Google Translate, Frisian, Kyrgyz, and Kazakh. It dramatically improved the translation quality, especially on the conversation. So if you go to Google Translate today, this is a screenshot of my account. I've contributed some numbers, and it'll tell you how many you contributed. But if you're a new user, you can go into the community from here as well. All right, so who are our Translate community? These are the quotes. I'm not going to read those. You can read while I'm talking. Our Translate community comes from all over the world. But you can see this is the pretty much the dark blue is the heavy traffic area. So we have a lot in the United States, South America, a lot in Brazil, Russia and Central East Europe, and West Europe, and you can see here, Middle East, and Southeast Asia. These are very, very active community members. The reason why China is kind of out in there in the light blue is because the app, Google Translate app, doesn't really work with Chinese government. So that's the reason, and I don't know, someday it'll become accessible. Yeah, and these are the quotes I cited from people who have told me, why I contribute, right? As you can see, it made me tear up when I see a lot of these, we don't have any incentives for them. We don't provide any prize, but they just contribute from the pure heart of doing some impact to the world, information accessibility. Okay, here's some pictures of Love Your Language, like community events basically. So these are organized by, kind of collaborated between the local community and local Googlers. So this in Bangladesh, Myanmar, and then Thailand, people host this translation, Love Your Language events, and improve their languages. And translate-a-thons, it's a fun name, that's why I put it over here. Yeah, we have hackathons, we have translate-a-thons, and then the people in Nepal, I don't know, a certificate, probably just, someone who organized the event, created the certificate for them, they contributed a lot. And we have community influencers who totally pull it off, with minimum support from us. And they got Kyrgyzstan Prime Minister involved, and this is about the Frisian. They hosted a big event to add Frisian into Google Translate. So this is what it looks like once you log in and go to our community. So this is community suggestions. Basically, there are like translation tasks and validation tasks. And then translation tasks is something, basically, if you see these terms, where do we come up with these? They're actually from the frequent phrases people often search in Google. So our hypothesis is if we get these right, that means we can make a lot of impact to people, right? Because these are very frequent search queries. So yeah, and you go and validate. So let me maybe just have a quick rundown on what happens, right? So if you go to the community, that's the type of phrases we serve for you to validate or translate. And then after you submit your answers, it goes to an evaluation process. It's pretty much like consensus-based, right? Google Translations will show up then in Google Translate after some time. We have spam filters. We have a team working on like filtering out the bad ones. So basically, the more contributions, the faster people will see it. There are two ways to make impact. You can initiate and lead community events. These are for people who are really like, hey, I'm really interested in organizing all these events, and we can help you. Pretty much like partner with us, but mostly on your own. We can help you with like PR and stuff, right? And contribute now in Google Translate. That's more like anybody. You log in, you go, you contribute, and you will learn, or earn points and badges, So if you have any questions, this is our email, and I'm pretty much on it. Yeah. Feel free to ask us. Thank you. Hope this is any questions?
Yes.
You showed an issue with the translation in Russian. I know in the past there have been some cases where some translations were offensive, or some internet trolls decided to go and translate something the wrong way to have some influence, and there could be politics or race issues, whatever. What's your policy internally to fight those, or is it something you just accept and live with?
We do not accept. We have a team, dedicated team, working on the spam filter, figuring out who they are, and find out the strategy of dealing with these people. But majority just finding out patterns for spam. Yeah, we call it spam detector, and it's being improved every day. And it's a learning tool, kind of machine learning that learns based on the previous spams, and yeah, so we do have mechanisms for this.
Okay.
Yeah. I can do that. So let me just answer the last question. Okay.
Oh yeah. after something is community translated and validated, do you ever have a paid translator to look over it just to make sure?
We don't. It's pretty much like we, trusted the people who come to our community are really coming from a good heart and do that. And we have a police mechanism like a spam detector, but pretty much is consensus based, right? Okay. Well, all right. So let's have a fun event. I don't know. Do you want to have a bio break or something? I know I've been here for like. Well, let's do that. Okay, and we can come back around maybe 5 minutes. Let's come back at 1:10.
Thanks for coming.
I don't know. Yeah, I run.